Beatriz Oliveira was the perfect example of success, at least on the surface. At 30 years old, she ran Sabor de Ouro, one of the most prestigious restaurant chains in the country, known for its elegant twist on traditional dishes and a sophisticated atmosphere. Her life was magazine cover worthy, a modern mansion in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods, surrounded by lush gardens and an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the horizon. Lavish parties were frequently held there, filled with influential people laughing and toasting with crystal glasses. Every morning, Beatriz woke up in Egyptian silk sheets, her room bathed in the soft light filtering through automated curtains. As she descended for breakfast, she was greeted by a perfectly set table where every detail, from the shine of the cutlery to the aroma of fresh flowers, reflected the meticulously curated life she led. Her wardrobe resembled a luxury boutique with rows of pieces designed by the world's most coveted designers, all organized by color and season. It was not uncommon to see her wearing an exclusive dress from the latest collection while driving one of her fleet of cars, typically an Italian sports model or a German SUV, depending on her mood for the day. Traveling was also a constant in her agenda. Paris to sample the new menu of a Michelin-starred restaurant, Tokyo for a private gastronomic event, New York to negotiate partnerships with exclusive suppliers. Beatrice was welcomed with red carpets at airports and had her name listed among the great investors in the culinary world. She collected experiences, but deep down, few of them truly moved her. Despite this, Beatrice's life was seen by many as an unattainable dream. It was easy to look at her trajectory and think she had achieved everything. After all, not everyone could transform a family restaurant into an empire that redefined fine dining at such a young age. Her lectures for young entrepreneurs were met with standing ovations, and her interviews often ended with questions like, "What's the secret to your success?" However, amid these displays of power and prestige, there were moments of silence that no one saw. Sitting alone on her balcony, a glass of wine in hand, Beatrice gazed at the city lights below and felt something that none of her luxuries could silence: a persistent emptiness. The truth that no one knew was that, despite all she had achieved, Beatrice felt she was drifting away from something important, though she couldn't quite identify what it was. One of the first clues to this discontent came during one of her parties. While guests indulged in canapés created by a renowned chef, Beatrice found herself in a corner, listening to fragments of superficial conversations about investments and fashion trends. She realized she had become a distant figure, a hostess observing her own event as a stranger. That night, as she walked alone through the house after the guests had left, the mansion felt cold, almost devoid of life. This feeling continued to grow, especially when she began receiving reports of complaints about her restaurants. It wasn't just comments about specific dishes. The words used by customers mentioned a loss of soul and human warmth. These critiques hit her like invisible arrows. How can there be a lack of soul in something I created with so much love? She wondered. Still, there was something Beatrice couldn't deny. The larger her restaurant chain grew, the more she distanced herself from the essence that had inspired her to start. Deep down, Beatrice knew that her obsession with success had transformed what was once a passion into a cold, efficient machine. She couldn't ignore the signs: the dissatisfaction of her employees, the menu changes that prioritized cost over creativity, and the constant pressure to maintain profit margins for investors. Something was broken, and for the first time in a long while, Beatrice felt she needed to act. Not as the powerful owner of Sabor de Ouro, but as someone willing to rediscover the truth behind every dish that left her kitchen. That night, while the city slept, Beatrice began to devise a plan. It would be risky and completely outside what was expected of someone in her position, but it felt like the only way to find what she had lost. As she turned off the lights in her office, she looked at her desk full of reports and whispered to herself, "I need to go back to the roots." For Beatriz Oliveira, success had always been a compass, guiding every choice she made since she was young. However, the higher she climbed, the more the view from up there seemed foggy. The dissatisfaction began as a whisper, almost imperceptible, amid the clinking of crystal glasses and the polite conversations in business meetings. It was easy to ignore at first, masked by the applause of events, the growing figures in her bank accounts, and the praise from experts celebrating her entrepreneurial vision. But over time, that whisper became impossible to silence. It started to seep into unexpected moments. During one of her trips to Paris, while savoring an exclusive dinner at a 3-Michelin-star restaurant, Beatrice found herself wondering, was this dish made with love or just with technique? The doubt, once unimaginable for someone with her refined palate and love for gastronomy, followed her back to the hotel and disturbed her throughout the night. This delicate line between perfection and soul was something she could no longer ignore. When she returned home, the reports from her Sabor de Uro restaurants began to reflect something that seemed to echo her own unease. Customer complaints were not just about delays in service or dishes that didn't meet expectations. They were about a sense of detachment. Words like cold, mechanical, and lifeless appeared with increasing frequency. For Beatrice, this was more than just an operational issue. It was a betrayal of her brand's very purpose, which had always sought to celebrate the warm, authentic experience of food. The dissatisfaction, however, wasn't limited to her professional life. In her personal life, Beatrice began to realize that she had isolated herself. Friends who once were confidants had now become mere contacts. Deep conversations had given way to quick, substanceless exchanges. Even her family relationships had deteriorated over time. The only person she still spoke with regularly was her older sister, Clara. But even those conversations were filled with awkward pauses and avoided any mention of Beatrice's emotional state. In an attempt to reconnect, Beatrice began to mentally review the reasons that led her to open her first restaurant years ago. She remembered her grandmother, the woman who had taught her to love cooking. As a child, Beatrice would spend hours watching her grandmother prepare simple yet soulful dishes. Her grandmother's kitchen was a place where all worries vanished, replaced by the aroma of freshly baked bread and the joy of sharing meals with loved ones. It was there that Beatrice learned that food had the power to create memories and bring people together. This emotional legacy had been the foundation of Sabor de Uro. But over the years, Beatrice realized that she had drifted away from that essence. Her restaurant had transformed into a success machine, but had ceased to be a place where people felt welcomed. And worse still, she no longer knew how to reconnect with this part of her identity. A decisive moment occurred during a visit to one of her more troubled restaurants. Sitting at a discreet table, disguised in a simple coat, Beatrice observed the customers coming and going. Many seemed satisfied, but few appeared truly impacted by the experience. She also noticed the staff, apathetic, with tired eyes and mechanical movements. A young waitress, whose name tag read Anna, let out a deep sigh as she cleared empty plates. When Beatrice asked her how work was going, the response was a forced smile and a "everything's fine, ma'am." Dite. But in Anna's eyes, Beatrice saw a different truth. There was proof that something was deeply wrong. It was as if the restaurant had lost its soul, and, in a way, so had Beatrice. It was that night, on her way home, that she made a decision. If she wanted to save her empire and, more importantly, save herself, she would need more than strategic meetings or expensive consultations. She needed to blend in, listen, and learn from those who truly lived the day-to-day life of Sabor de Uro. The idea of disguising herself as a cook started as an audacious, almost comical thought, but the more Beatrice reflected on it, the more it made sense. She no longer wanted to be the untouchable figure managing her restaurant from afar. She wanted to feel the warmth of the kitchen, hear the stories of her staff, and perhaps remember what it meant to love what she did. That night, as she looked out of her mansion's window, Beatrice felt something different. Not the weight of emptiness, but a spark of purpose. "I need to start over," she murmured to herself, and with that phrase the plan began to take shape. Beatrice Oliveira was used to being the supreme authority figure in her empire. Every decision was hers, every problem passed through her, but she had never felt as vulnerable as she did on the morning she entered the restaurant disguised as Beatrice Rocha, a supposed novice cook seeking an opportunity. The physical transformation was simple yet effective. Her typically styled hair was tucked under a white chef's hat, and her makeup-free face reflected a rawer version of herself. Dressed in a common uniform, she swapped her high-heeled shoes for comfortable sneakers, ready to face the long hours in the kitchen. As she crossed the restaurant's threshold, Beatrice felt a flutter of nerves she hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't the typical anxiety of a presentation to investors or an interview with a major newspaper. It was a different fear, more visceral. For the first time, she was not the powerful owner of Sabor de Oro. She was just another employee, ready to face the unknown. The reception was far from warm. Danilo, the head chef, looked her up and down, skepticism etched across every line of his face. "You're the new one?" he asked, his voice deep and rough. Beatrice nodded, trying to hide the tremor in her hands. "Yes, I'm here for the kitchen helper position." Danilo wasted no time establishing the rules of the game. "There's no easy ride here. If you can't keep up, the door is right there." He pointed to the exit with a curt gesture, making it clear that he wouldn't waste time on incompetent beginners. Her first task seemed simple, peeling potatoes. But for Beatrice, accustomed to delegating tasks, the job quickly proved harder than she had imagined. Her hands, used to the soft touch of expensive fabrics, began to show the first signs of physical effort, small blisters forming on her fingers as she tried to keep pace with Danilo's demands. The mountain of potatoes before her seemed endless, but instead of feeling discouraged, Beatrice found herself determined to continue. "If they can do this every day, so can I," she thought, drawing strength from her newfound resolve. The kitchen was a chaotic and fascinating universe. Pots were boiling, knives clanging against cutting boards, and voices echoed amid the noise of the equipment. It was a disordered ballet, where each movement seemed chaotic, but somehow contributed to a larger rhythm. However, the atmosphere was far from inspiring. The cooks worked in silence, their faces etched with exhaustion and resignation. There were no laughs, no camaraderie, only the sound of Danilo's orders and the constant demands from Rodrigo, the manager, who seemed more concerned with maintaining the fast pace than supporting his team. During the first shift, Beatrice quickly grasped the power dynamics at play. Rodrigo paced back and forth, monitoring everything with a critical eye. "Come on, come on! Do you think the customers will wait all day?" he shouted at one point, causing the staff to hasten their already frantic movements. Danilo, on the other hand, maintained his authority more directly, throwing sharp criticisms at any mistake. The tension was almost palpable, and Beatrice began to understand why so many reports mentioned the high turnover of staff. Amid this hostile environment, one face stood out. Eduarda, a young sous chef, wore a lighter expression, and a spark in her eyes seemed to resist the pressure around her. During a break, while pretending to organize some utensils near Beatrice's station, she whispered, "Don't worry. In the beginning it's tough, but you'll get used to it, or you'll leave like the others." Her words were laden with a mix of sympathy and resignation, and Beatrice felt a pang of sadness. How many good employees had her network lost because of such an oppressive environment? As the day progressed, Beatrice began to notice the small details that reflected the restaurant's toxic atmosphere. An older cook rubbed his temples, clearly exhausted. A young waitress struggled to balance heavy plates, while Rodrigo criticized her for not being faster. Every moment seemed to scream that something was wrong, and Beatrice, hidden under her disguise, absorbed it all. The routine in the kitchen brought to light skills Beatrice didn't know she possessed, and others she desperately needed to improve. She quickly learned that in a professional kitchen there was no room for hesitation. Time was a constant enemy, and any slip could jeopardize the entire service. However, she also began to experience small moments of joy, the sound of a perfectly plated dish leaving the kitchen, the subtle smile of Eduarda when one of her ideas worked. Each of these moments fueled Beatrice's determination to continue, but what caught her attention the most was Felipe. Tall, confident, and charismatic, he entered the kitchen like a breath of fresh air amid the chaos. His approach was completely different from Danilo and Rodrigo's. While they commanded with criticism, Felipe led with patience and inspiration. In a particularly hectic moment, he helped a younger cook fix a dish that had gone wrong, calmly explaining how to avoid the mistake in the future. "The kitchen is like a symphony," he said. "Every note matters. If one is out of place, the whole sound is is compromised. But we can adjust. Beatrice couldn't help but feel drawn to Felipe, not only for the way he commanded, but for the passion that radiated from every gesture of his. For the first time, she saw a reflection of what she had once felt for gastronomy. However, Felipe's presence also brought a new dilemma. How could she approach him without revealing her true identity? And more importantly, how would he react if he discovered that the kitchen assistant was, in fact, his boss? The following days were a mix of physical and emotional challenges. With each task, Beatrice learned something new, not just about the kitchen, but about herself. She discovered strength in her arms as she carried boxes of supplies, the precision of her hands when chopping vegetables, and most importantly, the humility that came with each mistake. Yet, at the same time, her interactions with the team revealed a painful truth. Their restaurants were failing, not due to a lack of talent, but due to a lack of empathetic leadership. Beatrice began to understand that her disguise was not just a way to observe, but an opportunity to change. Her experience in the kitchen was transforming Beatrice in ways she had never imagined. The hard work and authentic interactions were reigniting something within her, a passion that had long seemed forgotten. However, as she prepared to face another shift, Beatrice could not ignore a question growing in her mind. Would her journey as a cook be enough to save Sabor de Uro, or were the problems beyond what she could solve with her own hands? In the simmering heat of a professional kitchen, Beatriz Oliveira discovered that the most important lessons in life did not come from performance graphs or the pages of a detailed report. They were there, in the steam of the pots, in the whispered conversations among staff, and in the moments of pause when the exhausted team leaned against the walls to catch their breath. For a woman used to controlling every aspect of her life, these lessons emerged as a shock, a call to humility and reflection. One of the first lessons Beatrice learned was the importance of listening. As the owner of the restaurant chain, she had always believed she knew what was best for her business. But under the disguise of a cook, she realized she knew only half of what happened behind the scenes. One afternoon, while helping Eduarda prepare a side dish, she overheard an older cook, Mario, venting about feeling ignored. "I've suggested 3 times that we switch our vegetable supplier. They always deliver late and below standard, but no one cares," he complained, cutting an onion with precise but frustrated movements. It was something simple, yet revealing. Beatrice had never imagined that such small problems could impact the morale and efficiency of her team. From that moment on, Beatrice began to pay more attention to the voices around her. The complaints, the outbursts, and even the silences spoke volumes about the dynamics in her kitchen. During a break, as the team sat down for a quick lunch, Eduarda mentioned almost absent-mindedly how she missed creative dishes on the menu. "We have so many ideas, but it seems like no one wants to listen. It's always the same thing, you know. What sells more, what brings in more profit. I miss experimenting," she said, biting into a piece of bread. Those words struck Beatrice deeply. She realized that the rigid system she had implemented to maximize profits was stifling the creativity and passion that had made her restaurant special. Another lesson came from resilience. At first, Beatrice struggled to keep up with the exhausting pace of the kitchen, but over time, she began to admire the strength of her team. They worked long hours, often in stressful conditions, and still found ways to smile or help each other. One particularly busy night, Beatrice spilled an entire sauce on the floor while trying to balance several pans at once. Before she could blame herself, Eduarda and Felipe were at her side, cleaning up the mess and reassuring her. "It happens to everyone. Get up and keep going," Felipe said, with an encouraging smile. It was a simple moment, but it revealed the importance of solidarity and teamwork. The most powerful lesson, however, came from a customer. During one shift, Beatrice had the chance to observe a dinner where a family was celebrating a grandmother's birthday. Sitting at a table in the corner of the restaurant, the elderly woman laughed while her children and grandchildren sang happy birthday, the candles flickering on the cake. When the waiter brought out the special dessert the family had ordered, the birthday girl's eyes filled with tears. "This is the same sweet my mother used to make when I was a child," she said, moved. Beatrice felt a lump in her throat witnessing that moment. This was the true power of food, to create memories, evoke emotions, and bring people together. Yet she had lost sight of this essence in her relentless pursuit of growth and efficiency. Beatrice also began to reflect on the value of gratitude. Working in the kitchen made her realize how often she had neglected the efforts of her team. Every impeccably plated dish was the result of a chain of hard work, from sourcing the ingredients to careful preparation. One night, as Beatrice watched Mario teach a young cook how to put the finishing touches on a dessert, she felt a wave of respect for the man who had dedicated decades of his life to culinary arts. Like many others, he didn't work solely for money, but because he loved what he did, even if it rarely received recognition. By the end of each shift, Beatrice felt physically exhausted, but emotionally renewed. Each cut on her fingers, every burn, and every mistake served as tangible reminders of her learning journey. She began to see the kitchen as a microcosm of life, full of chaos, challenges, and moments of unexpected beauty. Slowly, something changed within her. The woman who had entered the restaurant with the intention of solving operational problems began to rediscover her passion for gastronomy and, more importantly, for people. The lessons Beatrice learned were not just about how to manage a restaurant. They were about leading with empathy, valuing human effort, and remembering that at the center of it all were the people, the staff, the customers, and even herself. With each passing day, Beatrice felt she was getting closer to something greater. She wasn't just trying to save Sabor de Uro. She was trying to salvage a part of herself that had been lost along the way. The changes in the restaurant began almost imperceptibly, like small waves that gradually turned into a tide. To the staff, Beatriz Rocha, the newly arrived kitchen assistant, seemed like an ordinary person, but with something different. There was a determination in her eyes that stood out from the general apathy of the team, and her questions, always asked at the right moment, sparked unexpected reflections. One change started with Eduarda, the sous chef, who had long had her ideas consistently ignored by Rodrigo, the manager, and dismissed by Danilo, the head chef. One afternoon, while they were chopping vegetables together, Beatriz encouraged Eduarda to share an idea she had been holding onto for months, a dish inspired by Brazilian roots with a contemporary twist. "Why don't you present this to Danilo?" Beatriz suggested, keeping her tone casual, but with a clear intent. Eduarda hesitated, but the ease with which Beatriz spoke made it seem possible. That same night, during a break, Beatriz saw Eduarda muster the courage to approach Danilo with her recipe notebook in hand. At first, the head chef made his usual dismissive gesture, but when Eduarda explained the flavor combinations and the simplicity of the preparation, something shifted. Reluctantly, Danilo agreed to test the dish. When they served it to customers as a special of the day, it was an immediate success. Beatrice watched with a discreet smile as Eduarda received the first compliments of her career, a spark of pride growing in the young chef. But not all changes came so smoothly. The confrontation with Rodrigo, the authoritarian manager, was inevitable. He viewed the growing interactions among the staff as a threat to his authority. During one particularly hectic shift, Beatrice noticed Rodrigo unnecessarily interrupting breaks, pressuring waitstaff to speed up service, and treating the cooks as disposable parts of a machine. It was the kind of behavior she had identified in her reports as one of the main causes of high turnover. Behind her disguise, Beatrice began to pay attention to every detail, accumulating evidence to act at the right moment. Meanwhile, Felipe, the guest chef, began to play a crucial role in transforming the environment. His approach was the opposite of Rodrigo and Danilo's. He treated every team member with respect, listening to their ideas and offering guidance instead of criticism. Beatrice saw in him the example of leadership she had always wanted for her restaurants. One night, after the shift, Felipe gathered the team and proposed something innovative. "Let's have an experimentation night. Each of you will bring an idea for a dish, and together we'll test the best ones." The suggestion was initially met with hesitation. After all, it was uncommon for cooks to be encouraged to create at Sabor de Uro. But on the designated night, something magical happened. Mario, the veteran cook, brought a recipe he had been making at home for years, a root broth with spices that enchanted everyone. A young waitress, Anna, suggested a dessert based on a childhood memory, a simple mousse, but with a touch of cachaça and lemon zest, which surprised everyone with its originality. The kitchen, once a place of tension, became a laboratory of creativity. Beatrice observed everything closely. Each smile and every moment of collaboration was proof that the restaurant needed not just technical changes, but a new culture. Gradually, the staff began to feel more valued. Trust grew. As a result, the quality of service and dishes began to improve. Beatrice sensed that her restaurant was reclaiming what it had lost, its soul. However, the changes did not come without resistance. Rodrigo, frustrated with the new dynamics, confronted Beatrice at a moment when Felipe was not around. "Do you really think your ideas will save this place? You're just a novice trying to get attention," he said sharply. Beatrice, fighting the urge to reveal her true identity, responded firmly. "It's not about me. It's about what's best for the restaurant. And if you can't see that, maybe it's time to reassess your priorities." Rodrigo left without words, but his glare made it clear that the tension between them was far from over. Meanwhile, customers began to notice the changes. Positive comments started appearing on social media. "The atmosphere is more welcoming," wrote a regular customer. "The dishes seem more creative and full of personality." For Beatrice, these words were more than compliments. They were a sign that she was on the right track. A high point of this transformation came when Felipe proposed that the new dishes be showcased at a special event for VIP customers and food critics. Beatrice knew this would be a decisive test, not just for the restaurant, but for the team. In the days leading up to the event, everyone worked together with dedication, adjusting flavors, perfecting presentations, and ensuring every detail was flawless. On the night of the event, the kitchen operated like a well-rehearsed orchestra. Beatrice, now fully integrated into the team, helped plate the dishes with the same energy and passion as everyone around her. When the first plates reached the tables, the response was immediate. Critics praised the originality of the recipes and the harmony of the flavors. One commented, "It's as if Sabor de Uro has rediscovered its essence." Beatrice felt a genuine emotion upon hearing those words. It was the kind of recognition that couldn't be bought. After the event, Felipe gathered the team for an impromptu toast. "The kitchen is a reflection of who we are, and today we showed that we are more than just a team. We are a family." Beatrice raised her glass along with the others, feeling part of something larger, even though no one knew who she truly was. At that moment, it didn't matter. She was exactly where she needed to be. The impact of her experience as a cook began to spread beyond the walls of that restaurant. Ideas emerged on how to replicate these changes in other units of the chain. But for Beatrice, true success wasn't just about the numbers or the compliments. It was in the sparkle in each team member's eyes. She had learned that leading was more than giving orders. It was about inspiring, listening, and valuing others. Still, Beatrice knew that challenges were far from over. Rodrigo continued to be a problem, and the weight of her secret identity threatened everything she had achieved. However, as she watched the team celebrating their victory, Beatrice felt more prepared than ever to face whatever came next. After all, she had discovered something precious. The true impact of her work wasn't in being a distant boss, but in standing alongside her team, transforming not only the restaurant but herself. Beatriz Oliveira never imagined she would rediscover herself among steaming pots, calloused hands, and the chaotic rhythm of a professional kitchen. Before taking on the disguise of a cook, she believed her role as the owner was that of a strategist, someone who commanded from above, making decisions based on numbers, reports, and market trends. But with each passing day at the stove, she realized that her true strength lay in what she had forgotten: human connection. Beatrice's transformation began from the inside out. It wasn't just the visible change, the hands now marked by work, the less rigid posture, or the softer tone of her voice when communicating with the team. It was something deeper. For the first time in years, she felt part of something greater than herself. She was learning to value not just the results, but the process, the people, the small gestures, and the stories behind each dish. One night, while cleaning her workstation after a long shift, Beatrice noticed Mario, the oldest cook on the team, still there, adjusting a pot with almost reverent care. "It's the root broth, isn't it?" she asked, recalling the special recipe he had presented during the tasting night. Mario nodded, a small smile on his tired face. "My mother used to make this when I was a child. It's simple, but there's something that makes people feel at home." Those words echoed in Beatrice's mind for days. She realized that at the beginning of her career, that was exactly what she sought to create in her restaurants. A sense of home, a sense of belonging. But over time, she had lost herself in the shine of Michelin stars and revenue figures. Mario's comment served as a gentle yet powerful reminder that true success came from touching people, not impressing them. As Beatrice reconnected with her essence, she began to understand that her journey was not just about improving the restaurant or reclaiming a lost spirit. It was about transforming her perspective on life. One of the most poignant moments occurred when she helped Eduarda prepare a dessert for a special event. While they decorated a plate, Eduarda shared her story, how she had started cooking at home to help her mother support the family, how she dreamed of opening her own restaurant someday, and how she almost gave up that dream because she felt no one valued her ideas. "But now I feel like there might still be a chance," Eduarda said, looking at Beatrice with gratitude. Those words touched Beatrice deeply. Without the young woman knowing, she had reignited a purpose in the woman everyone knew as the powerful owner of Sabor de Oro. Beatrice's transformation was not easy. There were moments of doubt, especially when faced with the contrast between her disguise and her true identity. One night, while walking home after work, she passed by one of the administrative offices of Sabor de Oro and saw her own portrait on a promotional banner at the entrance. It was a photo taken years ago, with a confident smile and a determined look, but now it seemed strange, almost distant. Beatrice paused for a moment, reflecting. Who was that woman? Did she still exist, or had she become someone completely new? The answer came on the day Felipe, the guest chef, approached Beatrice after the shift. "You've changed something here, you know," he said with a smile. "I don't know what it is, but it feels like things are starting to work better. People seem lighter, more engaged." Beatrice tried to hide her emotion, but those words meant more to her than any award or professional recognition. They were proof that her internal transformation was beginning to reflect in the world around her. However, Beatrice knew she couldn't remain anonymous forever. Each time an employee praised her or a customer made a positive comment about the changes in the restaurant, she felt the weight of the truth she was hiding. The hardest moment came when Felipe, unaware of her true identity, praised her during a team meeting. "Beatrice has brought something that was missing here," he said, looking directly at her. "A passion that reminds us why we chose this profession." Those words were like a double-edged sword. While they filled Beatrice with pride, they also reminded her of how her deception could hurt those around her. Beatrice's transformation also began to manifest in broader decisions. Inspired by the stories she heard in the kitchen, she started planning structural changes for the entire Sabor de Oro chain. She wanted to create training programs for employees, open spaces for them to share their ideas, and implement a system that rewarded creativity and effort. "It's not enough to fix what's wrong," she thought. "We need to build something better." But the biggest challenge was yet to come. Beatrice knew that to complete her transformation, she would have to reveal her true identity, and with that, risk losing everything she had achieved: the respect of her team, Felipe's trust, and the positive environment that was beginning to flourish in the restaurant. Even so, she knew she couldn't continue moving forward without facing the consequences of her choices. On a rainy night, while closing the restaurant alongside Eduarda, Felipe, and Mario, Beatrice felt the weight of her journey. She was no longer the same woman who had walked in weeks before, and as she looked at her colleagues, now friends, she knew she wasn't just transforming the restaurant. She was transforming herself, and with that, perhaps she was getting closer to something that no amount of money could ever buy: true purpose. Beatriz Oliveira's story is a vibrant portrait of the complexities of modern life, where success and emptiness often go hand in hand. To an outsider, her journey resembled a fairy tale, the girl who turned a culinary dream into a prestigious empire, crowned by critical acclaim and global recognition. But as she discovered, the shine of gold doesn't always reflect the true essence of what matters. Beatriz's journey invites us to reflect on the priorities that define our lives. At the peak of her career, surrounded by wealth and influence, she realized something that few have the courage to admit. She had lost touch with what truly made her happy. It wasn't success itself that troubled her, but the price she had paid for it. In trying to balance financial growth with the desire to offer something meaningful, she inadvertently sacrificed the soul of what she had created. Her decision to go undercover as a cook in her own restaurant was not just bold, it was transformative. This choice serves as a reminder that often, to truly understand the problems we face, we need to descend from our ivory towers and look at the world from the level of the people who live it every day. Beatriz traded her high heels for the simple uniform of a kitchen assistant, and it was in this disguise that she found the answers she was seeking, not in numbers, but in human stories. One of the deeper messages of this journey is the importance of humility. Beatriz, a woman used to being in charge, had to learn to listen before speaking, to observe before acting. She discovered that the voices that had once been muffled by layers of hierarchy carried powerful truths. By hearing Mario's frustrations, Eduarda's determination, and Anna's simple dreams, she began to see her business in a new light. These lessons did not come from management manuals or expensive consulting firms, but from the very foundation of her team. Another striking aspect of Beatriz's story is the idea of reconnection. She began her journey believing she needed to save her restaurants, but she ultimately realized she also needed to save herself. Reconnecting with the passion that had motivated her at the start of her career was like rediscovering a lost part of her identity. More than just well-crafted dishes, what she sought was the meaning that each meal could bring, the ability to create moments that brought people together and forged lasting memories. This reconnection also brought to light the need for authenticity. Beatriz saw that the relentless pursuit of perfection could often dehumanize even the most sincere experiences. In the smile of a customer moved by a simple dish, or in the spark of pride in Eduarda's eyes when she saw her recipe on the menu, Beatriz found the true purpose of her business. Not to impress, but to touch. Beatriz's transformation is a reminder that it's never too late to change. Even someone who seemed to have it all found space for personal growth and renewal. Her story shows that no matter how high we climb, we can always rise again if we are willing to learn from our falls. And sometimes, the answers to the most complex questions lie in the simplest actions: listening, recognizing, and acting with empathy. Ultimately, Beatriz's message resonates beyond the worlds of business or cuisine. It is a universal lesson about the need to find balance in our lives. She challenges us to ask ourselves, are we chasing after something that truly brings us joy, or are we merely going with the flow of what others expect from us? Are we valuing the people around us, or do we see them merely as cogs to achieve our goals? Beatriz discovered that true success lies not in winning awards or accumulating wealth, but in creating something that inspires, connects, and uplifts those who touch our lives. And this message transcends any profession or situation. It is an invitation for everyone, regardless of their circumstances, to seek the essence of what truly matters. In the end, Beatriz Oliveira's story is proof that the greatest riches in life cannot be measured in dollar signs or Michelin stars, but in the bonds we form, the moments we share, and the impact we leave on the lives of others. She teaches us that when we infuse purpose and passion into what we do, we create something far more valuable than any recognition. We create a legacy. By the end of her journey, Beatrice understood a fundamental truth that forever changed her perspective. True wealth lies not in the possessions we accumulate, but in the impact we have on people and the memories we build along the way. It was a simple yet powerful lesson, made possible only by the path she chose to walk, a path that required humility, courage, and above all, the willingness to reinvent herself. Before her experience as a cook, Beatrice lived surrounded by symbols of success: her modern architectural mansion, her designer clothes, the imported cars that turned heads wherever they went. Each item represented a milestone in her achievements, but in retrospect, she realized that many of these possessions had become barriers. They distanced her from the people and emotions that truly gave life its meaning. Even the business meetings and glamorous parties that once filled her schedule now felt empty, like staged scenes from a movie in which she was merely a spectator. As she reflected on what really mattered, Beatrice recalled the simple yet significant moments she experienced during her time in the kitchen. She thought of the look of relief on Eduarda's face when her idea was accepted, the warmth she felt while helping Mario prepare the broth he loved so much, and Anna's laughter upon seeing her dessert win over a difficult customer. These moments, though small, were the most genuine and transformative of her life. One of the biggest reflections her journey brought was about the role of wealth in her life. Beatrice no longer wanted to be just a wealthy woman. She wanted to be someone who used her position to do good, to create opportunities, and to inspire those around her. Her experience in the kitchen showed her that true leadership lies not in imposing oneself, but in empowering others. It was this realization that led her to implement changes in her network of restaurants, a system that recognized the talents of her employees, encouraged innovation, and rewarded effort. Beatrice also began to question how the world at large views wealth. During a dinner with business friends, she recalled hearing one of them talk about his new collection of luxury watches. Previously, she would have actively participated in the conversation, perhaps even mentioning an item she had in mind to buy. But this time, she remained silent, reflecting. How many people could he help with the value of those watches, she thought. It wasn't a judgment, but a realization of how priorities shift when we look beyond ourselves. This shift in perspective led Beatrice to adopt a new motto for her life and her businesses: create wealth that transforms. She decided that the focus of her restaurant network would not only be serving quality food, but also transforming lives. She initiated training programs for young people from underprivileged communities, offering internships in her kitchens and encouraging those who dreamed of becoming chefs. She also implemented a profit-sharing program for her employees, ensuring that everyone on the team felt a part of the success of Sabor de Oro. Furthermore, Beatrice began to value experiences above all else. Instead of investing in more material possessions, she dedicated her time and resources to projects that created memories, both for herself and for others. She organized culinary events in local communities, where the proceeds from sales were donated to social causes. She traveled to learn more about the origins of ingredients she used in her dishes and brought those stories back to her restaurant's menus, connecting food, culture, and people in ways she had never done before. This transformation also led her to a deeper understanding of happiness. Beatrice realized that for a long time she had confused achievements with fulfillment. She had relentlessly pursued success, but had not stopped to ask herself, why am I doing this? For whom am I doing this? These questions, which once seemed obvious, became a guide for her new approach to life. However, the most significant lesson Beatrice learned was that happiness is not a destination, but a journey. She found it in the moments of chaos and laughter in the kitchen, in the unexpected connection with Felipe, and in the smile of every employee who now saw purpose in what they did. Happiness, she discovered, was built day by day in the choices we make and in the way we treat others. Looking back, Beatrice realized that her true wealth was not measured in figures or properties, but in the lives she touched. She had built a legacy not only as a successful entrepreneur, but as a leader who valued people above all else. Her journey was proof that even amidst luxury and responsibilities, there is always room for a fresh start, to reconnect with what truly matters. Beatrice's story is not just a tale of personal transformation, it is an invitation for all of us. It challenges us to ask what truly matters. Are we living in alignment with our values, or are we merely going with the flow of what society expects of us? Are we using our resources, whether financial, emotional, or creative, to build something meaningful, or are we caught in an endless pursuit of more? In the end, Beatrice teaches us that true wealth lies not in accumulation, but in sharing. And that life, like a good recipe, depends on the right ingredients, a pinch of humility, a generous dose of purpose, and a final touch of love.